some kind of essence of beauty.
Well, I had exactly the same experience in listening to a terrible Baptist preacher on the radio.
Well, that's the same thing.
And it was really awful.
Yes.
And it was as phony as it could be.
Yes.
And it was concerned with money. Send in your dollar, you know, if you want to copy this address, be sure to send in your dollar. But as I listened deeply into that voice, it sounded like someone saying, well, I'm just alive and I got to eat too. And it was a little baby calling for its mother in the dark. But it was coming on like, you know, all this God and Jesus and salvation and everything, and saying it as if it knew all about it. But you could see this was a big front on quaking terror underneath.
Yes. Well, the same thing, you see, there was nothing that Aldous really was a very fine musician, and musical comedy for him was not his type of music. And particularly this one, I don't know which one it was, but it was particularly bad. And yet, you know, if you listen, he said, you would find something in that.
Did he ever discuss these experiences with Krishnamurti?
He did. He told me that the very first time that he had it, with Maria and Dr. Osmond, you remember?
Mm-hmm.
And then he went up to Ojai and spoke about it to Krishnaji. And Krishnaji was very familiar with the whole thing. He said, oh, yes, yes. He said, oh, yes, that's right, that's so, that's so. You know? He knew exactly what Aldous was speaking about.
Mm-hmm.
I have a feeling that Krishnaji is there all the time, except when he has to come back and talk a little bit, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that is the merit of Krishnamurti to do this speaking to people, because probably he would have a much better time not to.
Would you say that Aldous was greatly influenced by Krishnaji?
Yes, I would say that he was influenced by Krishnaji probably more than by any other single religious man.
Well, I, in a way, could say the same thing. Only one is always very hesitant in acknowledging any debt to Krishnaji because he so hates the idea of having any disciples.
Yes.
But I, for my part, feel that he is one of the most original and profound thinkers in the world, because he's always a bit unexpected. He's never in the ordinary ruts of a religious or psychotherapeutic thinking.
Well, the trouble is that the trouble is not the trouble. The point is that that is what he is, but he does not give any way to get there, and that is the great thing, you see. People say, well, how am I going to do that? And you know that he really was very, very angry at me when I wrote that book, you know, You Are Not the Target, with recipes of techniques. I thought that I was very innocent, and I told him about it with great pleasure. And, he was quite violent about it.
Oh, you tell that story in your book, though,
yes,
really, don't you?
Yes, and yes, because I spoke about this during a lunch, and then we were alone, and he looked at me very, very intensely. And he said, you know, all these people that go around helping other people, I think they are a curse. Looking at me. I was so shaken, but after a few seconds, I found myself, and I said, well, what do you think you are doing? And his answer was so delightful. He said, oh, but I don't do it on purpose. And that was something that Aldous just adored, this thing. I don't do it on purpose, you know. It was so clear to Aldous what he meant. But it's not clear to everyone because it's not easy, really.
That was the conversation, wasn't it? That, again, it's reported in your book, where he ends up on this extraordinary note that the state of consciousness that he's trying to describe as in himself is one which has no center.
No center, that's right. And it is just so opposite of what we find. You know, we always try to find the central core of ourselves.
Yes.
And go to the center, find it, be the center. And he said, no center.
Yes, that was very strange.
Very strange. one can feel that for him it's all so natural. For Krishnamurti, all this is so natural, so obvious, that it seems to him preposterous even to have to say these things. But I must say it's not natural and easy for many people that I know. It's not easy for me, certainly.
Did Krishnaji in any way disapprove of Aldous' use of psychedelics to see these things?
Well, this I don't know. He never told me that, and I don't think that he ever said anything like that to Aldous. No, I think the two men were so nice together. I don't know. They didn't speak much. You know, we once visited Krishnaji in India for 3 days, and I don't think that they ever talked very much about all this deep philosophies or modes of existence. They just were very nice together. One felt a tremendous liking for each other. It was a very special atmosphere when they were together. But I don't know that he told him, you know, directly, you shouldn't do this or anything like that.
In other words, when they got together, they didn't discuss deep matters, but just enjoyed themselves.
As a matter of fact, I must tell you about those 3 days, because we were living in the house of this great mystic, and he had a marvelous cook. And we always looked forward to the next meal. It was the most refined food that you could imagine, without any animal food, you know, completely vegetarian. And the variety of tastes and the delicacy, I mean, the great refinement, really, of the way that Krishnaji lives. In a way, he could have been, maybe he is an hedonist, you see, because he appreciates all the things of perception.
We say hedonist.
Hedonist.
Yes.
Hedonist. I remember him once speaking about materials. And everything, his perception are so cleansed, you know, the doors of his perception are very, very clear. And it was marvelous. I was waiting for the next meal.
You see, this is fascinating, because this doesn't come out in Krishnamurti's lectures.
No, I know.
Nor does humor come out.
No, and he has a great deal of humor, although he's very, very preoccupied about the world. He was. I haven't seen him lately. He was preoccupied about the world because in the world there's so many churches and priests and psychologists and all that. That was, which probably he equates in a way with politicians and all the rest of it, you know. People that are being followed, that are followers. He has that, but do you think that one can be without leaders? Do you really think so?
Well, I suppose you could argue that the presence of churches and priests and psychologists were like the presence of spots on a person who has chicken pox. Of course, these spots are, in a way, letting off infections inside the body, and therefore they fulfill some sort of function. But they go with a diseased condition. After all, if we were living in harmony with the way of nature, the Tao, as the Chinese call it, we wouldn't need churches and priests and psychotherapists.
I know, but we don't live in the Tao.
No. And but perhaps, well, I think, you know, this is a bit off the subject, but when you get into a real jam and you realize it's useless to call the psychiatrist, you're undergoing a very creative experience.
Yes, if you go to all the way to the end of it, not if you stop it in the middle.
And you don't call the psychiatrist,
no.
you see.
No.
I have a kind of terror of calling a psychiatrist into any situation, because I know what it might lead to.
Yes.
And so I always try to leave it alone. And I don't want to offend my psychiatric friends by saying this, but that means some of them know how to handle things, and some of them, I was just talking to one the other day who wouldn't dream of getting one of his patients into a mental hospital. And
who would not dream?
No, he wouldn't dream of it. He does everything in his power to avoid that sort of a solution or non-solution.
Yes.
But I think, in a way, this is Krishnaji's attitude to all the people who are trying to help others, is that a lot of people are doing that kind of work to try and help other people. But I know in my own case, I'm not really trying to help the world. And I think that's what Krishnaji is saying when he doesn't do this on purpose. And he says he doesn't do it on purpose. And I think that Aldous had a very similar attitude, that he was writing about mysticism and philosophy and religion, not because he was even writing about the alarming state of the world. But you never felt in him the fanatic.
No.
He was so extraordinarily interested in what was going on that seems to me the primary reason why he wrote.
Oh, yes. Well, that was his life, was his way of living,
yes.
To write, But I asked Aldous, when Krishnaji told me that, and so violently, I said, what do you think? Shouldn't I do this? And he said, no, everything should be done. What Krishnaji does is marvelous, but what you do, giving tools and giving recipes, that is also necessary. I mean, he included everything. He didn't think that, only one thing, that there was only one panacea. That is, of course, was completely...